am a man of God. Let fire come down from heaven.
One generation saw the power, but did not remain in its presence.
My father! My father!
And when the fire broke out, what remained was not silence.
Where is the God of Elijah?
Go up, bald head! Go up, bald head!
You mock the God who sent me.
No more fire, but provision, not just judgment, but life.
We are surrounded!
Lord, open his eyes.
The cloak didn't carry power, it carried presence. The sky was still moving, the wind still swirling, as if creation itself was still reacting to what had just happened. And then, the movement ceased, the fire disappeared, the whirlwind dissipated, and what remained was silence, heavy, deep, like a world that had just witnessed something it could not explain. And in the midst of that silence, Elisha remained, motionless, his eyes still fixed on the sky, as if waiting for something to return. But it did not return, because it was finished. The prophet had departed, and the heavens had closed. But something was still there, on the ground, simple, without brightness, without extraordinary form, and yet carrying something that could not be seen. The mantle. He looked at it, not in haste, not with impulse, but with understanding, because that was not just an object, it was a calling. And a calling is not taken lightly. His steps were slow, heavy, like someone who understands that once he moves forward, there is no turning back. He approached, stopped, and for a moment, did nothing. His hand hovered over the mantle, but did not touch it. Not yet. Because something was happening within him, something silent, but deep. The weight, the same weight that once rested upon another man, now before him. His breathing grew heavier, his heart heavier. And then he touched it. His fingers closed around the fabric, and in that instant, something changed. There was no light, there was no sound, there was no visible sign, but it was real, because the calling does not manifest outwardly first. but inwardly. A memory crossed his mind, like a distant echo. A voice, firm, unmistakable.
If I am a man of God,
Silence returned, but it was not the same silence. Now there was awareness. Now there was decision. He stood up, the mantle in his hands, and began to walk, without a crowd, without recognition, without visible direction, only the path, because those who are called do not always know where they are going, but they know they cannot stay. And then he arrived, the Jordan, the same river, the same place, but now without the Master. The waters flowed, strong, indifferent, as if nothing had happened, as if the heavens had not opened, as if the fire had not fallen, as if everything had returned to normal. But it had not, because something had changed, and he knew it. He stopped. His eyes turned to the waters, then to the mantle, and then inward, because that moment was not about the river. It was about faith. He held the mantle tighter, breathed, and spoke.
Where is the God of Elijah?
The silence was immediate. No answer, no sign, no voice. Only the sound of the water and the weight of the moment. Because faith is not speaking after the answer, it is speaking before it. He lifted the mantle and struck the waters. Nothing happened. The current continued. The river remained. And for a moment, time seemed to stand still. But he did not retreat, did not look back, did not give up. Because in that moment, it was not about feeling, it was about trusting. He lifted the mantle again, now without hesitation, without doubt, and struck once more.
Where is the God of Elijah?
The waters trembled, drew back, divided, not slowly, but with force, as if obeying, as if recognizing, as if responding not to the man, but to the God who was with him. A path opened, dry, in the midst of the impossible. And he looked, not with surprise, but with understanding, because in that instant, he understood. It was not the mantle. It never was. It was the presence. He took the first step, entered the path, and began to cross. Alone, but not alone, because the same God who answered with fire now answered with faithfulness. And as he moved forward, a truth was established. The fire had departed, but the presence remained, and the story had not ended. It was only beginning. And when he crossed, there was no celebration. There was no crowd waiting, only the silence of a world that did not yet know what had changed. But heaven knew, and that was enough. Elisha went on, from city to city, from path to path, and with each step, reality began to reveal itself, because the calling is not proven in the moment of experience, but in the weight of responsibility. And the first to feel that weight was the people. Jericho, an ancient city with walls marked by history, with land that should produce life, but carried an invisible problem: the water, the source. That which sustains everything was corrupted, bitter, heavy, unfit. And where the water fails, the land responds. Plants do not grow, fruits do not remain, life becomes limited. The men of the city approached, with respect, but also with urgency, and they said,
Sir, the city is good to live in, but the water is bad. The land does not produce as it should.
They were not questioning, they were recognizing. There was a limit. And then he answered, without hesitation,
Bring me a new vessel and put salt in it.
It made no sense, not in human logic, but there was something in that man that did not allow doubt to remain. They obeyed. They brought the bowl, they put the salt in it, and they gave it to him. And then he walked to the source, the place where everything began. Because God does not deal only with what is visible. He deals with the origin. And there, before the corrupted water, he spoke with clarity, with authority, without raising his voice.
Thus says the Lord, I have healed these waters. There will be no more death, nor barrenness in this land.
And then he threw the salt into the source. A simple gesture, but filled with something greater. And in that instant, the change happened. The water was touched, transformed, purified, and the land responded. Because when God speaks, creation obeys. But the weight of the calling does not manifest only in restoration. It also manifests in confrontation. Because where there is truth, there will also be rejection. And that did not take long. He was going up the road, leaving the city behind, not seeking recognition, not looking back. But then, voices, loud, ironic, disrespectful. A group of youths was coming down the road, faces marked by contempt, eyes filled with provocation, and they began to shout,
Go up, bald head! Go up like the other one went up! Go up like the other one went up! If you are a man of God, then go up too!
It was not just mockery, it was a challenge. It was rejection. It was an echo of unbelief. He stopped, slowly, turned around, and looked at them, not with impulsiveness, but with awareness. His eyes were firm, deep, and then he spoke.
You mock, not me, but the God who sent me. May the Lord see and judge what you are doing.
Silence. For a moment, nothing happened. The wind passed, the land remained. But then, a sound arose, coming from the surrounding hills. Deep, animal, approaching quickly. Branches breaking, earth being torn, movement intense. And then they appeared, two bears, large, females, bursting out of the forest with force. Dark fur, massive bodies, aggressive eyes, direct movement, without hesitation, like a response, like a judgment. They advanced, fast, relentless. The youths tried to retreat, but it was too late. Chaos took its place. The screams replaced the laughter. Fear replaced contempt. Arrogance was broken. And what began as provocation ended in consequence.
May the Lord see and judge what you are doing.
And he remained, without running, without reacting, without interfering, only watching, because that moment was not about him. It was about God. And on that day, a truth was established. Before the land, before the people, before all who heard. The God who heals is the same who judges. And the man who carries the mantle does not carry only grace. He carries authority. He carries responsibility. He carries weight. And from that moment on, no one treated that name lightly anymore, because the silence had been broken, and the voice of God had begun to echo again on the earth, not with fire from heaven, but with something constant, inescapable, the presence. And the world began to understand that the mantle had not fallen in vain. Time passed, and with it, the voice that was once ignored began to be sought. Because there are moments when man resists God, but there are moments when he can no longer ignore him, and that moment arrived. Moab rose up, a nation that once served, now rebelled. The tribute ceased, the control was broken, and Israel needed to respond. The king rose, Joram of Israel, and spoke before his men.
Moab will not remain free. They broke the covenant. They will answer for it.
But he knew he could not go alone. Messengers were sent, and before Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, the proposal was made.
Will you go up with me against Moab?
I will go up. As you are, so am I. As your people, so are my people. But we must ask, which way will we go?
Through the desert of Edom.
A strategic choice, but risky. Edom was also involved. 3 kings, 3 armies, 1 decision. And then they departed. They marched, men, horses, chariots, but the desert does not negotiate with men. 7 days, without a source, without water, without rest. The sun burned, the ground reflected the heat. The animals began to fall, the men to weaken, and what began as an advance became exhaustion. One soldier said,
We won't make it to the battle. If thirst does kill us, Moab will.
And then the king spoke, with frustration, with fear.
It was the Lord who brought us here, to deliver us into the hands of Moab.
Silence, heavy. But then Jehoshaphat spoke.
No, king. Let's not talk like that. Is there a prophet of the Lord here?
If you may speak, my lord.
The men looked at one another, until a servant answered,
There is a man who served Elijah. They call him Elisha.
Then let us go to him. If there is direction, it will come through him.
And they went, not as confident kings, but as men without answers. And then he entered, Elisha, without armor, without an army, but with something that changed the atmosphere. Joram spoke first, without reverence.
Prophet, we are surrounded by thirst and by war. Speak! What should we do?
What do I have to do with you? Go to the prophets of your father, and to the prophets of your mother.
No, it was the Lord who brought us here, and now we are about to die.
Wait, direct. No politics, no negotiation. And then he said,
If it weren't for Jehoshaphat's presence, I wouldn't even look at you. Bring me a musician.
A musician?
The sound began, soft, steady, and as the sound flowed, something changed. The tension eased, the atmosphere aligned, and then the word came.
Thus says the Lord, dig trenches in this valley. Ditches? In dry land? But what's the point? There's no water. You will not see wind. You will not see rain. Will be filled with water.
The silence was absolute, impossible. But he was not finished.
And not only that, he will deliver Moab into your hands.
Then we will obey. Begin! Dig! Now!
The men started, without understanding, but without an alternative. The dry ground was opened, ditches were formed. For hours, through the night,
Are we digging for water? Or for our own graves? If he spoke for God, this will be life.
The night passed, silence prevailed, and then morning came. No wind, no clouds, no sign.
There is nothing.
Water! I see water!
Everyone turned. On the horizon, a stream appeared, flowing, advancing, as if coming from nowhere, filling the ditches quickly until it covered the valley, until it became enough.
It's not possible. Everything is possible for God. When God speaks, the earth responds.
But on the other side, Moab was watching. The morning sun reflected on the water, and the surface looked red, like blood.
Look! The kings! They've turned on each other!
It's theirs. They fought among themselves. Now the victory is ours.
Forward!
And they advanced, without caution, without preparation. But when they arrived, Israel rose up. Moab fell, without understanding, without time. What seemed like victory became a trap.
It was strategy. No, son. It was his word.
And Elisha remained, without a sword, without armor, but at the center of it all. Because when God speaks, even the desert produces, even war bows, even kings learn that there is something greater than them. And on that day, a truth was marked. It was not strength, it was not numbers, it was not the plan. It was the word. And that word does not fail. It never has, and it never will. And after the war came the silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of ordinary life. Because God does not move among kings. He also moves among those no one sees. And it was there, far from armies, far from palaces, that another story began. A woman without a name, without status, but carrying a burden. She was a widow. And what that meant in that time was more than loss. It was vulnerability. It was exposure. It was limitation. Her husband had been a faithful man, one of the prophets, a man who feared the Lord. But now, he was no longer there. And what remained was not honor. It was debt. Men came to her house, not with compassion, but with demand.
Your husband owed us money, and you know it.
He served the Lord.
And yet he owed us. If you don't pay,
He'll take your children.
Silence, heavy, final. Because in that system, debt was paid with life. They were not threatening. They were simply declaring. And they left, leaving behind despair. She went inside, looked at her sons, and there was no answer, only a decision. She went out and went to that man, the only one who still represented hope, Elisha. She arrived without formality, without protocol, and cried out,
Your servant, my husband, is dead. And you know that he feared the Lord. The creditor came and wants to take my 2 sons.
What do you want me to do for you?
I have nothing. Nothing at home. Except a little oil.
Go. Borrow vessels from all your neighbors. Empty vessels, not a few.
She looked, confused, but listening. And he continued,
Woman, go into your house. Close the door. You and your children. Take your oil and begin to pour it.
Silence. She did not ask how. She did not ask why. Because when there is no way out, faith does not seek logic. It seeks obedience. She returned, called her sons. They went out, knocking from door to door.
We need jars. Any you can spare.
For what?
Quick on. More! Bring more!
And they began to bring them, 1, 2, 10, clay vessels, simple vessels, empty vessels. And then the house was filled, not with wealth, but with possibility. She shut the door, just as he had said, and the world remained outside. Only her and her sons, and what remained, a small jar of oil. She looked, breathed, and said,
Bring me a vessel.
Another one! Bring another!
She continued, another vessel, and another, and another. The sons ran, they handed them to her, and she poured. Without stopping, without understanding, but seeing. Because the miracle did not begin big, it began continuous.
Another one! Here! There are no more.
Silence. And in that moment, the oil stopped. Not before, not after. Exactly when the vessels ran out. She stood still, the jar still in her hand, breathing fast, eyes full, not of doubt, but of understanding. She returned, found Elisha, and said,
The vessels are full.
Go. Sell the oil. Pay your debt. And live on what remains.
It was not only a solution, it was provision. Not only an escape, but continuation. And on that day, without war, without crowds, without spectacle, God did something profound. Because He is not only the God of great moments, He is the God of the little, of the empty, of what remains, of what seems insufficient. And in His hands, even what is almost nothing becomes enough. And that house, which once carried fear, now carried testimony. Because when God enters, the limit ceases to be the end and becomes the beginning. And after provision came something deeper, not lack, but loss. There was a woman in Shunem, attentive, perceptive. She saw that man passing by more than once and said to her husband,
I have observed this man who passes by us is a man of God. Let's make a small room for him on the roof. Let's put a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp, so when he comes, he can rest there.
And so they did. And one day, Elisha entered that room. He saw it and perceived, and asked his servant,
Gehazi, who is this woman? She has no son, and her husband is already old. Call her.
She came, stood at the door, asking nothing, expecting nothing. And then he spoke,
At this time next year, you will embrace a son.
No, my lord. Man of God, do not lie to your servant.
But the word had already been released, and time fulfilled it. She conceived and gave birth to a son. And the boy grew, ran through the fields, called for his father, called for his mother. Life simple. Until one day, in the field, under the sun, he put his hand to his head. The pain was intense. The father told the servant to take him to his mother. The boy was taken, and he stayed in her arms until midday, and then he stopped. His body became heavy, unresponsive, breathless, lifeless. And at that moment, she didn't scream. She got up. She went up to the room, the prophet's room. She placed the boy on the bed, his bed. She closed the door, and she left. With determination, she called her husband and said,
I beg you, send me one of the servants, and a donkey. I need to go and meet the man of God.
Why are you going today? It's not a new moon, nor is it Saturday.
Don't worry. Everything is all right.
The husband gave her what she asked, a servant and the donkey.
Guide the animal. Go quickly. Don't slow down. Unless I tell you to.
And she departed, without looking back. From a distance, Elisha saw her and said,
Gehazi, look, that's the Shunammite woman. Go meet her. Ask her how she is, if everything is all right with her husband and their son.
Gehazi went and asked, and she answered, It is well. She continued until she arrived. She got down from the donkey, and then she threw herself at his feet, held on tightly. Gehazi tried to pull her away, but Elisha said,
Leave her.
Her soul is in deep anguish, and the Lord has hidden it from me.
Did I ask my lord for a son? Did I not say, do not deceive me?
And Elisha understood, and said to Gehazi,
Gird up your legs, take my staff and go. If you meet anyone, don't greet them. And if anyone greets you, don't answer. Go quickly. Place my staff on the child's face.
Gehazi departed, but the woman said,
As the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you.
And Elisha went with her. Gehazi arrived first, entered the house, went up to the room, saw the boy, motionless. He placed the staff on his face, waited. Silence. Nothing happened. No sound, no movement. He left and returned to meet Elisha and said,
The boy did not awaken, my lord.
Elisha entered, went up to the room, and there was the boy on the bed, without life. He shut the door, stayed alone, and prayed. He went up, laid himself upon the boy, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands, and remained. Nothing happened. He got up, walked around the room, returned, and did it again until the body grew warm, slightly, but real. And then the boy sneezed, once, twice, 3 times, until 7 times, and he opened his eyes. Life returned. Elisha called. She entered, stopped, and then he said, Take up your son. She fell at his feet, took the boy in her arms, and left, without words. And on that day, a truth was established. The God who gives is the God who can restore, and death does not have the final word when God decides to answer. And the mantle continued, not as a symbol, but as an instrument of presence. And after life was restored, the story crossed borders, because God is not limited to a people, nor to a land, nor to a system. He responds where there is faith, even if it comes from afar, even if it comes from those no one expects. In Syria, a man stood out, Naaman, commander of the army, respected, feared, honored by the king, a man of victories, a man of authority. But there was something he could not defeat: leprosy, on the skin, in the body, in the identity. A mark invisible to many, but impossible to hide from himself. And inside his house, a voice arose, small, but full of faith. A young Israelite servant girl, captured in war, but not separated from her faith. She said to Naaman's wife,
If my master were before the prophet in Samaria, he would be healed.
Simple, direct, without doubt. And that word reached Naaman. He heard it and chose to act. Because when there are no more solutions, even the mighty learn to listen. He went to the king of Syria and said,
I have heard of a man in Israel, a prophet, who can heal.
Then go. Take letters, take gifts, take honor.
And he went, with horses, with chariots, with wealth, with expectation. He arrived before the king of Israel, delivered the letter, and it read,
Heal this man. Am I God? To kill and to give life. Why does he send me this man? He is looking for a reason against me.
But the news reached Elisha, and he sent a message.
Take this message to the king. Why did you tear your clothes? Let him come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel.
So Naaman went, with his entourage, with his position, with his expectation. He stopped at the door of the house, waiting, perhaps for a reception, perhaps for a grand gesture, perhaps for an immediate miracle. But Elisha did not come out. He sent a messenger, and the message was simple.
This is Elisha's message. Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored.
Silence. A river's name, a number, nothing more. And Naaman reacted with indignation.
I thought that he would come out, that he would call upon the name of the Lord, that he would lay his hand on the place and heal me. Aren't the rivers of Damascus better than all the rivers of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed?
And he began to leave, because pride does not accept simple ways. But his servants approached him with wisdom and said,
My lord, if the prophet had asked for something difficult, wouldn't you do it? How much more so when he only says, Wash yourself, and you will be cleansed.
The tension fell. Pride began to give way. And then he decided. He went down to the Jordan. He looked at the waters. Simple, common, nothing extraordinary. But it was not about the water. It was about obedience. He stepped in. He dipped. Once, nothing. Twice, nothing. 3 times, nothing. 4, nothing. 5, nothing. 6, nothing. The silence grew. Doubt tried to return, but he continued. The 7th time he went under. And when he came up, everything had changed. His skin, restored, clean, like that of a child. No mark, no trace, no disease. He looked. Without words, without explanation, only reality. And he returned, not as a commander, but as one who had understood. He stood before Elisha and said,
Now I know that there is no God in all the earth, except in Israel. I implore you, accept my gift. As surely as the Lord lives, before whom I stand, I will not accept it.
Naaman insisted, but he refused, because what comes from God is not to be traded. Then Naaman said,
Then allow me to take earth, so that I may no longer offer sacrifices to other gods, but to the Lord.
And he departed, transformed, not only in body, but in heart. But the story did not end there, because where there is a miracle, there can also be corruption. And Gehazi saw. He saw the wealth, he saw the opportunity, and he thought,
My master let this man escape. I will run after him, and I will take something from him.
And he went. He ran. He caught up with Naaman and said,
My master sent me. 2 young men came. They need silver and clothes.
Take everything.
And he gave, more than was asked.
And Gehazi returned. He hid it. He stored it, as if no one saw. But God sees. And Elisha called him.
Gehazi, where do you come from? Your servant has gone nowhere, my lord. Did not my spirit go with you? When did that man get down from his chariot to meet you? Was it time for him to receive silver and clothes and riches?
The leprosy of Naaman will cling to you and to your descendants forever.
And in that instant, what had left one came upon another.
The leprosy of Naaman will cling to you and to your descendants forever.
Gehazi went out, white, marked, irreversible. And in that act, two truths were sealed. God heals, but he also exposes. He restores, but he also judges. And what began with pride ended in humility. And what began with faith ended in life. Because the mantle was not about power. It was about purity. It was about obedience. It was about presence. And that presence cannot be bought, cannot be manipulated, and cannot be used. It simply is. And after nations were touched and hearts were transformed, the war did not cease, because when God moves, the kingdoms of the earth react. The king of Syria once again gathered his men, officers, captains, and said,
"We will set ambushes in specific places, and Israel will fall without knowing."
The plans were drawn, paths defined, movements calculated. But something began to happen. Every time they prepared an attack, Israel was not there. Every time they advanced, the target had already moved. Once, twice, 3 times, until frustration turned into suspicion. And the king said,
"Which of us is for the king of Israel?"
My lord, there is no traitor, but there is a man, the prophet in Israel, Elisha. He tells the king even the words you speak in your chamber.
The atmosphere changed, because that was not strategy. It was exposure. It was something greater. And then the king said,
"Find out where he is and bring him to me now!"
No negotiation, no hesitation. And they found him, Dothan, a small city of no military importance, but now at the center of something unseen. During the night, the Syrian army moved, silent, organized. They surrounded the city, horses positioned, chariots aligned, soldiers ready. No escape. At dawn, Elijah's servant rose, went out, and saw. And what he saw took his breath away. The horizon closed, the city surrounded, full force, no escape. He ran back, entered, breathing heavily, eyes filled with fear, and said,
"My lord, we are surrounded. There is no way out. What will we do?"
Silence. Elijah did not rise in urgency. He did not react like one under threat.
They are many. They are everywhere.
Do not be afraid.
Not be afraid? How can I not fear?
For those who are with us are more than those who are with them.
The servant looked around, confused. Nothing had changed. Still only 2 of them, and the enemy army visible, real. The threat remained.
Nothing
has changed. It is still only us and them.
Lord, open his eyes.
And the servant saw. The hills all around were not empty. They never were. They were full, an army, but not like that of men. Greater, vaster, more real. Horses of fire, living flames surrounding them, moving with power, with authority. And among them, angels, warriors, immense, steady, with eyes like burning coals, with a presence that made the very air feel heavy. Swords like living light, ready, positioned, prepared, as if waiting only for a command. The servant could not speak. He only stared, absorbing, understanding. The battle was never balanced, and it was never out of control. And then, the Syrian army began to descend, confident, certain, unaware. And as they approached, Elijah spoke again.
Lord, strike this people with blindness.
I can't see! What's happening? Stay together!
Follow me.
And immediately their vision was taken. They did not fall, they did not stumble, but they could not see. Eyes open, but without understanding, total confusion.
I can see! I can see! Where are we going? I can't see anything! Maintain formation!
But the formation no longer existed. Then Elisha went out to meet them, without fear, without haste, and said,
This is not the way. Nor is this the city. Follow me.
And they followed, without questioning, without realizing, led by the very man they had come to capture. They walked through roads, through paths, until they reached Samaria, the heart of Israel. And when they entered, Elisha prayed again.
Lord, open the eyes of these men.
And then they saw, and they were surrounded, now not as hunters, but as prey. The king of Israel reacted immediately.
My father, shall I strike them down?
No. Would you strike down those you have taken captive with the sword? Set before them bread and water, and let them go.
Unexpected, unthinkable, but obeyed. A table was prepared before enemies, food, water, respect. They ate, they drank, and they departed, and they never returned, because on that day there was not only deliverance, there was revelation. The invisible governs the visible. Protection does not come from what is seen, but from what is. And the man who walks with God is never alone, even when it seems so. And the servant never forgot, because on that day his eyes were opened, and after that he never saw the world the same way again. And the mantle continued, not only working miracles, but revealing realities, because the presence does not only protect, it reveals. And when it reveals, fear loses its power. And after everything, miracles, wars, restoration, revelation, time moved on, as it always does, silent, constant, without asking permission. And even the men of God feel its advance. Elisha grew old. His body no longer responded as before. His steps were slower, his breathing heavier. But his eyes still carried something unshakable. The presence had not diminished, and there was a weight in the air, something that did not need to be said, but could be felt. The end was approaching. Even the king perceived it. Joash of Israel came, not with an army, not with authority, but alone. He entered, saw the prophet lying down, fragile, and in that moment, all the strength he knew seemed small. He drew near, and his eyes filled with tears, and he said,
My father, the chariots of Israel and their horsemen.
Silence. Those words echoed in the room, like a late recognition, like an understanding that comes only at the end, because he knew what stood before him. It was not just a man. It was protection. It was direction. It was the link between heaven and earth. And Elisha answered, calmly, with purpose.
Bring me a bow and arrows.
The king hesitated for a moment, but obeyed. He brought the bow, he brought the arrows, but Elisha did not stop there. He stretched out his hands and placed his hands upon the hands of the king. And then he said,
My son, open the window to the east. Aim there and shoot.
The king walked, opened it. The light entered, filling the room.
The king drew the bow, breathed, and released. The arrow cut through the air, disappeared. Then Elisha declared,
Arrow of victory from the Lord. Arrow of victory against Syria. You will strike down the Syrians until you consume them.
The king heard it, but did not yet fully understand. Then Elisha said,
Take the arrows and strike the ground.
He struck the ground once, twice, 3 times, and stopped. Silence. And then, something changed. Elisha grew angry. His voice rose, something rare.
Why did you stop? You should have struck 5 or 6 times. Then you would have struck Syria until you completely destroyed it. But now, you will strike it only 3 times.
Silence, dense, irreversible. Because in that moment, it was not just a gesture, it was revelation. How far faith goes determines how far victory reaches. And the king understood, but too late. And then, time moved on, without announcement, without spectacle. The prophet departed. There was no fire, no chariot, no crowd, only silence and reverence. But the story did not end, because God does not end with a man. He continues. Sometime later, men were carrying a body, a dead man, without ceremony, without honor, only necessity. Suddenly, enemies appeared in the distance, and fear seized them. And they threw the body into the first tomb they found. And that tomb was not empty. And when the body touched the bones of Elisha, something happened, immediate, The dead man reacted. His eyes opened, breath returned to his lungs, his body moved, and he stood up, alive, before them. The men stepped back, terrified, unable to understand, because even in death, the presence still moved. And in that moment, the final message was released, not by words, but by action. It was never about the man. It was never about the body. It was never about time. It was about God. And what he carries is not limited to life, nor does it end in death. And then the silence returned, but now filled with understanding. The prophet departed, but the presence remained. The mantle passed on. The story continued, and it would continue, because God does not depend on a man. He raises, he uses, he establishes, and he continues. And the story does not end. It moves forward, always. And for those who learn to see, it becomes clear. The invisible is more real than the visible, and the presence is eternal.